The response clearly highlights his stats.
It gets worse.
Phil was next seen being led into the house by Daniel Geller, Natalie's brother, straight to the kitchen to enjoy some more drinking. This time, unfortunately for Phil, from the spirits cabinet in the main house. The shot of choice was a very alcoholic lime green liqueur. Now this is where the story and Phil's head become blurred. One fact, however, is consistent in all stories. John Edney was definitely involved. Some 2 shots of the green liquor later, Phil was requesting yet more. Allegedly, Edney,
Being the good Samaritan that he is,
decided to get Phil a mixer. 50% fairy liquid, 50% green liqueur. This continued for a further 3 or 4 shots, with the concoction gaining in fairy liquid and decreasing in green liqueur. Phil, blissfully unaware, continued necking the shots. After about half an hour, emerged from the main house in a state like I have never seen anyone before. Fairy liquid had been rubbed into his hair, face. He was literally foaming at the mouth, sweating and mumbling to himself, probably trying to warn those around him of the imminent act he was about to perform.
Phil collapsed on the grass verge, losing control of all bodily functions. I don't think I need to draw you a picture, but suffice to say he was covered in his own faeces and urine. It unfortunately got worse for poor Philip, in that the girl that he was trying to impress witnessed the horrific image. Philip was in such a state that someone saw fit to call the emergency services. Paramedics arrived, tutting and shaking their heads. They decided to leave him in the hands of the most responsible, David Bruce of all people. For those of you that know David, you'll know why I say this. This incident occurred on the Friday night, bear in mind. And if all that wasn't enough, Philip then had to endure 3 days of CCF camp. He was unable to wash or change his clothes, and in his own words, and I quote, "I was pissing, shitting and puking bubbles, only managing to bite one bite of a Mars bar in 3 days. Oh, Philip."
I think that nicely covers Phil's early experiences with drinking. What about the other parts of adolescence that young men dream about and their parents fear? Driving. It does seem to be a common theme in Blue Coat wedding speeches. So Phil proudly managed to pass his driving test and duly persuaded his dear mother to lend him his car so he could drive to Reading on a night out. Of course Barbara had her concerns, but Phil assured her his driving skill was unrivalled and he'd be taking great care of the car.
So off he went, trying to forget the minor incident that occurred that lunchtime, which may have inadvertently affected the car's handling. Picking up a few friends en route and headed into town. The evening over, fun had by all. Phil, the designated driver, had all of a sudden had a few more friends than he'd started with. Never one to say no or make a decision. And proud of his newfound freedom, he agreed to jog all 4 home, a convoluted trip that spanned 2 counties. To give you a little context now, this is 5 lads squashed into an A-Red Fiesta, 70 miles an hour on the A329M. The story becomes a little unclear at this point, but what we do know is that Phil, while swerving to avoid a
Flying pig.
Little old lady.
school child, insert what you will, lost control over 70 miles an hour, rolling a number of times into the hedgerows. Thankfully, everybody was fine. You would think that would be enough to put someone off Cars for Life, but oh no, not Phil. That wasn't the end of Phil's indiscretions with cars. He subsequently crashed 3 further cars, 2 of which were write-offs. You'll be pleased to hear, though, that Phil hasn't crashed a car in over 3 years.
Hey.
Well,
sorry. Wrong.
6 months?
Sorry.
We were going to put this down to Vicky's good influence, or the fact that he was no longer trying to race nameless members of the Blue Coat alumni. Then there was the comic incident involving Phil a car, a sock, and the police. For fear of offending some of the audience, we'll ask you to use your imaginations. I would also add that Phil had been inspired to try this upon hearing the experiences of another member of this audience. Anyway, Phil found himself driving home late into the evening along a deserted, poorly lit back street. We can go into no more detail other than to say he had his trousers down by his ankles, sock in hand, and was driving erratically when the police pulled him over.
Somehow, Phil made it to uni. And there he was, a very social creature, moving in many circles and making many friends, some of whom are here today. We contacted a number of his friends and his friends and family, and asked them for words that they felt described Philip Richard Lockett Coleman.
A great friend, trustworthy, loyal,
clever, determined, successful.
In fact, we barely found a person who had a bad word to say about Phil. We did find some.
lazy, arrogant and stubborn.
But if his dad doesn't know him, then who does? Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is traditional to finish our speech with some advice for the newlyweds. After giving it some thought and consideration to the type of audience, we settled for this. Marriage should be a half-and-half partnership. Phil, you need to realise, mate, that anyone who believes that knows little about women and even less about fractions.
In all seriousness, we're all proud to be your best men. We truly value your friendship and think you make a fantastic couple. We wish you every happiness together in your married life.
Just look at them. Their love seems so pure and so simple. Vicky so pure, Phil so simple.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you still capable of standing, would you now do me the honour of rising to your feet and raising a toast to the new Mr. and Mrs. Lockett Coleman, to Phil and Vicky.